Well, Michael is another one of my mentors who I've been very fortunate to work with for the last couple of years, actually, through a lot of other stories that we'll share for another day. But Michael's worked in Silicon Valley for 35 plus years. He's the founder of Gistics, where he serves as a retained advisor to high growth potential startups, speeding their discovery of scalable growth and their creation of cultures that will best serve customers and teammates. Or as he is more colloquially known, the business shaman of Silicon Valley. Welcome, Michael.
Hey, thanks for having me. And welcome for everybody that's in the room. Ivo, Zufi, Stacy, welcome. You still there, Chris? Whoop, looks like Chris dropped off. So let me just continue on. Here's the session. Here's what we have planned for today. Now, I've taken a 55 minute keynote address and I've brought it down to 20 minutes, 23 minutes. But this is the outline from the full thing. And the point is Waymaking in the age of chaos. So without further ado, let me get right into this. So what's all the fuss about? What's going on today? The premise of our presentation, actually the premise of our conference here, is that we are at an inflection point where a wave of innovation and wealth creation has run its course, it's achieved its maturity, and a new wave of innovation and wealth creation occurs. In that flux state, in that crossover state, we have basically a what we call a phase change. Now, to the right, this is a model that we developed for an industrial automation, augmented reality software provider taking on Industry 4.0. And one of the premises that one of the things our research showed is that a 10-year cycle tends to characterize these waves of transformation. However, as they cross over from one to another in this phase change, we have a tremendous confusion or flux, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And to the point that I like to tell is a story about Professor Einstein. He used to give a test to all of his grad students at Princeton. And after 2 or 3 years, his students would say, "But Professor Einstein, this is the same test that you gave us last year." And Professor Einstein would say, "Ah, yes, but the answers are different this year." So that's what happens when there's a paradigm change or when there's a inflection point. Same questions produce different answers. And so we hope to lay out today some answers to what lays ahead. So what's next? Economic historians call our current age the age of chaos. I won't bother reading the quote down here other than to say hyper liquidity of capital, data, and work characterize the next 20 years. And this will give rise to public ledgers, smart contracts, crypto will give rise to 3 things that extend the sharing economy, the influencing economy, and the gigging economy. Co-ownerships, co-owning and subscriptions, co-creation, and kinshipping, which I'll explain in a bit. Moving on. Okay, how can we make sense of a chaotic system? There is a framework pioneered by a professor called Cynefin, that's C-Y-N-E-F-N, Cynefin. And he basically says that in any one particular domain, you have a simple system, complicated, complex, or chaotic system. And a lot of people still believe that we are in a complex system. However, in this flux state, it is actually more akin to chaos. So in terms of how do we make sense in a chaotic system? Well, the analog is that of fighting a forest fire or sailing or surviving a tsunami. There's no cause-effect patterns. It just stuff is happening left and right. And so the action, the way that we make sense in a chaotic system is to impose order, taking one step and then recalibrating. So that is one of the cornerstones of waymaking in the age of chaos, is that our job is to impose order and take one step and recalculate. I'll be building on that theme as we move forward. Okay, what's next? Web3. What's a simple boardroom description of Web3? Well, I'm literally lifting this straight from Mark Andreessen in a really interesting interview with David Rubenstein on Bloomberg TV. First of all, Mark says Web3 is a foundational technology like open source or Java. It's a foundational technology upon which there will be 10,000 use cases in a 5 to 10-year run in terms of how to exploit, how to build out, how to realize the potential of that new set of enablements of a foundation technology. Next, it's the 8th or 9th enterprise IT architecture. Now, don't have time here to explain it other than to say it is a formally defined architecture for provisioning enterprise services, business services, to either businesses or to consumers. And third, and this is the key point that I really want to build on, it's a new type of transaction processing computer. So it's a new way of processing transactions, a new way of ledgering exchanges of value. So in this presentation and so on, we'll apply these to three pivotal shifts. The shift of the influencer creator economy into the co-creation economy, sharing and renting into the co-ownership and subscription economy, and gigging and fractionalizing of work into what we're now calling the kinship DAO economy. So at the cornerstone of this in transaction processing is what is trust. Now, I had to strip out a good 15, 20 minutes of material just on this topic, but let me bring it back to this. We are in, one way of characterizing, one way of understanding, visualizing trust is circles of trust. So in the center, your first circle of trust, those are your best friends, people that you would literally put your life in hands. The second ring of trust is your core team, the people with whom you have regular interactions around projects. And third would be your support network. These are coworkers, trusted customers, vendors, personal advocates. So fundamentally, we're talking about restructuring or providing new ways of putting trust to work beyond just the physical limitations of these first, second, and third rings of trust. The key point that I want you to remember here as we go forward is who has earned the right to live in your first ring of trust? Which technology provider have you agreed, have you accepted as a trusted, intimate, knows all your secret broker or technology provider? This will have profound implications as we start to peel back some of the use cases for Web3 technology. Transactions. I'm going to spend a little more time here in that this is a little more of a complex. This session is actually almost a 20 minutes, 15, 20-minute section. I'm going to get it down into 90 seconds. So where's my cairn? So you see this rock, a pile of rocks. These were erected halfway between a village and another warring kill-you-on-sight villages. Now, these villages oftentimes had to trade with each other. However, if I ever came into physical proximity, I would be obligated to kill you. So what they did in ancient Greece and in other places is they would create these cairns, these stelas, these gramillas, and this was overseen by the god of Hermes. So as a villager, I would bring my surplus goods and put it in front of the cairn and let Hermes oversee the trusted exchange or the no trust exchange of goods. And if somebody exploited me, excuse me, sorry, what happened here? Okay, so another term, and we use the term in English, cairn, for a Scottish term to connote the next line of sight millstone, wayfinding through rugged highlands and foggy bogs. So the key point, waymaking in the age of chaos, is you don't have to worry about what's over the horizon. Just where's my next cairn? What's my next line of sight destination? That's part of waymaking in the age of chaos. Now, this is where we're going to spend a little more time. I've cribbed this from a brilliant article by Taylor Pearson. I'll give you a link to it, in which he says that where he takes the theory of transaction costs by Robert Kosey and says, look, transaction costs are comprised of three costs: triangulation costs, sourcing or search costs. How much time and effort did it take me to find a product or service that I need? Measuring value and benefits, which is part of the initial assessment. Do I want to buy this or not? Transfer costs, negotiation, bidding, back and forth, payment and logistics costs. Those are transfer costs. And then finally, trust costs. The cost of receiving goods or services, the cost of tolerating failure within a success, and recourse and return costs. So the case that Taylor Pearson makes is that in the industrial area favored really large companies with full-time jobs. However, as we move into the computing area, into the blockchain area, the consumer preference skews heavily towards renting as opposed to buying. And there is a tremendous collapse of triangulation costs, transfer costs, and trust costs. And in fact, the blockchain era, as he characterized it, is the transformation of trust costs. Cool. So monetization. Again, I took about 15 minutes of material out of this. Let's get to it. So what depicts the Amazon flywheel? So this is kind of a back of the envelope drawing, I believe sourced by Jeff Bezos, where he explains the business model of Amazon. And fundamentally, by framing a business flywheel, this allows us the incredibly incisive question by which to prioritize any project, purchase, merger acquisition. How will this make our flywheel spin faster? And more importantly, what makes our flywheel spin faster? I will submit, and then later in the day, Matt Weeks will really bring forward or bring it home that data exhaust is the super fuel in terms of making a business wheel fly faster. Okay, next point, future proofs. So these are speculations in terms of what's ahead of us. Now, one dimension of future proofs is they are things that have already happened. I submit that there are, from the influencer economy, that begat the creator economy, and the creator economy will morph with Web3 technology into the co-creator technology. Later this afternoon, you'll hear from a fellow named Malik Nasser on the future of music. And he's going to be talking about how the creator economy, the co-ownership economy converge using Web3 extensions to create an entirely new business model and an entirely new business flywheel for musicians and performing arts. So from the sharing economy, we get the renting economy and the subscription economy. This will morph into the co-ownership economy. And then lastly, the kinship wallet economy, where we have untethered fractionalizing economy, fractionalizing work, the freelancing and gigging. And this will lead into something that we've been talking about and working through in our Thursday Waymaker sessions, is what would it take to get a more fair exchange of value as a gigster? Well, don't sell your time, sell value realized by your customer and get a fair share of that. So again, we could do a whole workshop on that. But fundamentally, we're talking about constituting households or kinships, five, six breadwinners, one or two care providers, into an LLC, and then turning that into a DAO. So ahead of us, the next 10, 15 years, we will see a transformation rolling through home ownership and accelerated asset formation using kinships, five to seven people that will form their own LLC and use that LLC to leverage the kinship wallet economy. Okay, now the Waymaker's Guide. The Waymaker's Guide to the Age of Chaos. So in the course of this, I was going to explain it's 37, not 42, but let me skip on that. So so somebody asked me, well, Michael, what is the strategy? What's your strategy for this age of chaos? And my point is, I don't have one. I have relationships. Well, what are your goals? None. I just look for my next cairn, the next line of sight milestone in an overall journey. Well, what's your why? Oh, you mean my fifth and final why? Well, the decision making by which to understand whether something is consistent with my greater purpose is, I wait for hell yes or maybe later. So I want to really bring down decision making down to a very simple rubric. It's either hell yes or no, maybe later. And I'm going to use my gut sense of what's my highest enthusiasm here to determine hell yes. So if I just get neutral and wait for a hell yes to show up, I am now accessing my cognitive unconscious in terms of my over the horizon radar sixth sense, and being able to, and to the degree that I stay consistent with operating from one hell yes to the next, that is the way by which we make our way forward. So here's the way of Waymakers as I frame it. I reject your reality and substitute my own. Now, this was popularized by Adam Savage of the TV show Mythbusters, but he actually got it from Haruhi Suzumiya. Okay, a Japanese light novel series written by Naguro Tanagawa. Okay, so let me bring this home in terms of a story. In the early 2000s, I went to Shanghai for the very first time, and as I came back, a friend of mine, Wade, who was worked at Hewlett Packard, said, "Oh, I'd love to get your impressions of my country. Would you like to have lunch?" And I said, "Sure." So we went down. So I went down to Cupertino, right around the corner from where Hewlett Packard was at the time. And we went to this funny Japanese sukiyaki house there on Stevens Creek. And I shared with him, I took a walk. And on this walk, it was an 8-lane thoroughfare. And then as I walked down to where the department store I had to buy some socks and underwear because I forgot to pack them. There was a 10-lane thoroughfare that intersected. And at this intersection, there must have been 10,000 people. There must have been 2,000 people on bicycles. There must have been 50, 75 policemen all running around with their big hats and their big sticks and so on. And I had this visceral sense of, it's just one kind of bad hair day, one kind of bad moment, and this thing could conflate into a riot. So I shared this with Wade over lunch, and he said, Michael, let me tell you a story about how things get done in China. He says, before I joined Hewlett Packard, I was with a VAR, value-added reseller, and we sold CAD/CAM into into the textile industry, using computers to automate the construction of woven fabric and stuff. And I met with finalized this deal with a 70-year-old entrepreneur. Footnote, most entrepreneurs in 2002 were 70 years old in China. Not today, but then it was. And he said, great, let's do, he put together a plan. It was going to cost $4.5 million for a whole completely automated textile producing factory. And Wade said, okay, great. Let me go back to my office and draw up a plan, a project plan. Now in China, there's no touching. There's just not a lot of touching. They're not a touchy-feely culture. But this entrepreneur blew up and said, what you mean? And he hits Wade in the chest. What do you mean, project plan? You are my project plan. And the top of my head blew off, because in that one moment of recognition, I got the cornerstone for Waymaking. And that is, I know that you know that I know. It's known that you have no idea what's going to happen tomorrow or the next day. I know that you know. It's known that whatever plan you come up with is bullshit within 10 or 15 minutes of it being written. I know that you know that I know. It's known that you make a promise to me to get it done, knowing full well that you have no idea how you're going to do it. And what you're going to do is you're going to take one step and recalibrate the myriad possibilities of the next step and choose the next best step. And one step after another, and you will get this done. That, in essence, is Waymaking in the age of chaos. It is to take one step and then scan the horizon for the next best step to take. And I submit that next best step is going to be a hell yes. It's going to be a visceral sense of my highest enthusiasm. And if there's no next step in sight, if there's no cairn in sight, don't do anything. Wait, stop, get silent, extend your vision to what's my next best step here. The big mistake to make in the age of chaos is just take the next step that comes to mind. That because in an age of chaos, our brains are shutting down, too much input. And our brains will force us into something that's mediocre, something that's familiar, and something that's comfortable. This is a going out of business strategy. Your brain is set on automatic for something that's familiar, something that's mediocre, something that's socially acceptable, and something that's comfortable. So the point is, your brain in its natural default setting is not your friend. It will hijack your ability to see the next step. So summarize in saying, I want to thank you. I think I'm more or less on time here. Do we have questions? Anyone questions? Chris. Hey, Chris.
Hey, Michael, how are you?
Good.
Good. Thank you so very much for sharing all these insights. I also just shared a link to some of the Waymaker webinars that we've recorded over the past 6 to 8 months or so. So if anyone's interested in going further, there's a really great library of insights that Michael's been developing for really his whole life, but bringing together now in this particular age. And I'm just so grateful to have his mentorship and insights here with us to help guide us. And this whole morning here in this sort of leadership and culture track was intentionally designed to build on the early keynotes, to go into the idea that Bill Leiter brought out in having this state of aligned readiness for a balanced organization, really emphasizing the importance of culture and how that's a differentiator. And then, of course, we went to talk to John Bates about the importance of personal storytelling and being able to share your own story very well. In the last session, we had Michael Liskin and Dr. Elizabeth Lindsay talking about some of the elements of thriving within a broader community, in a thriving civilization, and what that means inside of our own smaller communities, and the connection and mentorship we have and what we can learn from one another. And now we've brought it all home with really a call to arms for what you need to do to help this next era rise. And not just rise and occur, because it's going to happen. One of the reasons why I'm here is because this is happening, and I know it's happening. So it's important for us to start shaping the direction of that future in a way that best serves us all. And so that's what we're doing here today. And as we're wrapping up here, I didn't see any other questions here yet, but I've got one for you. Are you ready to launch the next Waymaker cohort that I am making available and announcing in about 30 minutes?
Sure.
We're going to be opening up a new cohort, a mastermind for those people who are interested in Waymaking, to join a group, to be a part of other Waymakers, let me say this better, to commune with other Waymakers in charting this journey and figuring this out together and learning from each other and mentoring each other and growing together. And as many of the people who are, well, a few of the people at least who are in the room today, who are part of our current Waymakers collaboratory will tell you, it's quite a special sort of experience. Every day it feels like an MBA year in the course of an hour and a half conversation with so many deep insights from some of the brightest people I've ever met. And Michael, I just want to thank you for sharing your network with us and sharing your insights and helping to lead the way as we learn to Waymake together.
Cool.
Awesome. We will be back in 30 minutes after.
One last thing, Chris.
Sure.
And that has to, let me get my screen back here. So 2 last things. One is for those people that are interested in developing kind of in a kind of a masterclass environment, a personal strategy or a personal stance for Waymaking, that will be one of the primary benefits. So at the end of, in this next Waymaker cohort, it's really about co-creating with others a way of Waymaking in your particular area of the chaos. The second thing is the part that I had to take out was this hello world and the notion of a digital daemon. I guess we'll just have to come back and do that on another day. But essentially, what technology provider has earned the right to live in your first circle of trust? So it's not just a wallet. It's where all your health information goes, financial information, plus all your neurocomputational imaging data, all your biorhythms. Basically, it's all the secrets that in many cases you might even not share with a life partner. So who's earned the trust?
And there's a huge number of new companies that are sprouting up to do just that. And there will be more, because I don't think that people want to do all of the services that they get from a bank to look after themselves, because a lot of Web3 right now is really not about sharing. It's really, and I should have brought this up earlier with Brian Solis, it's kind of like owning a boat. It's cool, it's great, it's exciting when you're using it, and the rest of the time it's kind of a pain in the ass. So
it's a hole in the water.
It's
a hole in the water into which you pour money.
Yeah, and which you can't necessarily get as easily as we would hope, as easily as we would say, at least now. But that's part of what's changing, and that's part of why we're joining the conversation now. And that's why I've brought Michael Moon, Bill Leiter, John Bates, Michael Liskin, and Dr. Elizabeth Lindsay together to do this leadership and cultural segment. We're going to be doing much more on this to help guide the leaders of this next generation, the leaders of DAOs, the leaders of community-owned and driven organizations together, and to help them be more successful by benefiting from the wisdom, from the mistakes, and from the insights that we've generated over the past several decades.